What's up, my dudes? Valkyrja. Today I want to talk about something that I've seen come up here and there every now and then, and I want to talk about it because it's kind of actually cool to discuss, basically. So I've seen people here and there say that old Genshin was better, that Genshin's getting worse with time, and basically Hoyo's ruining it, blah, 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 blah. And to kind of reiterate my point, or to drive my point home, I set up what was a very common old school team. Because you would get Shingling, Barbara, and Amber for free, and if you managed to get Venti, which a lot of people rerolled for, this would be kind of the team you ran until you got, somebody better than Amber to actually be the main damage dealer. But I want to talk about this because it's kind of crazy to me that people even think this way. So, as somebody that's a literal minute one player, I played the second the servers are open. You can look at the bottom right, tell by how low the number of my UID is. I have a very valid opinion on this because I played Genshin on and off for the past 2 years or so. Yeah, since the game has came out, I basically been playing it almost daily, except for the part where I took like 3-4 months off the game. And I want to give you guys my thoughts. So first off, whenever Genshin came out, the game was hard. Just straight up, the game was difficult. The first floor 12 was the hardest floor 12 yet. I know a lot of people are going to talk about HP pools and stuff like that, but you have to consider character selection. The units you had actually available to use. So floor 12, the original floor 12, if you guys remember, if you guys were there for it, but if you guys weren't, I'll explain it for you. It was, at the time, because of time gating and stuff like that, you had at most level 60, level 70 units because there was a lot of stuff time gated and basically progression gated, so you had to wait. And you had at most level 60 to 70 units. You had a very small portion of characters available to you, but most importantly, the floor on both sides was cryo. And you would have basically the cryo Fatui fat guys that had the giant shields. You would have hydro and cryo versions of them, so they constantly try to freeze you. And about every 3 to 4 seconds, you would have a cryo cage that would pop up from the floor and do about 30% of your HP, or about half, depending on what level you were. So someone like Barbara, someone like Chi-Chi, a healer was an absolute must because we didn't have shields at the game at the time. So actually dealing with the mechanics of the game was something you had to do, and it was very difficult. And as for character selection, if you did not manage to get Diluc on your summon, you had Bennett, who was never a featured 4-star, so odds are you didn't have Bennett either. So realistically, you had Shingling and Amber that needed to be on both sides. But the only realistic way you were beating floor 12 originally was Shingling, Bennett, Diluc, and Klee, because Klee was one of the first character to come out. She came out in 1.0 right after Venti. So you would have 2 Pyro on each side supporting either Klee or Diluc so they can actually run through it. Or you would have to run Amber, Shingling, Bennett, Diluc, because you had to have all these Pyro characters to melt all the Cryo shields, because there was a ton of Cryo shields. I didn't have that. I had something as similar to what you're seeing right now, and while one side would be doable, because I would have double Pyro, the other side just was not. It just straight up wasn't. Like, you didn't have enough resources to build out 8 characters to begin with, so you had to be very picky with your resources. You had to go in with underleveled characters. Talent levels were a big issue because you didn't have the weekly talent mats. The very first floor 12, because of everything that was available to you at the time, is easily the hardest one. It just, like, the challenge it provided was absolutely insane, to the point where I didn't beat it, a ton of people didn't beat it. The only people who really beat it were the whales who had the necessary characters, and had the characters at a decent cons, because even if you had the characters, it still was heavily skill reliant, and like I said, it was very resource deprived. So yeah, the very first floor 12 was easily the hardest one considering the time it was available. So that's one thing. The game has gotten casualized over the time to where it's very easy to where now meta team comps don't matter. You don't need a meta team to beat floor 12. If you have enough investment in other teams, you absolutely can beat it with basically any team. Just depends on the amount of investment you have in it. So that's one really good change that's gotten over time. Another thing is, I don't know if you guys know, but now, the max resin cap, well, not this, but the max resin cap was 120 instead of 160. So you had to actually visit the game twice a day to either condense your resin, which the condensed resin cap, I don't even think condensed resin was a thing then. It wasn't. Yeah, condensed resin literally wasn't even a thing then. But you would basically have to use all your resin up twice a day. Either that or it just kind of went to waste, and with how time-gated the progression was and how resource-deprived you were, you wanted to make sure to get as much value out of that. So you would have to log in twice a day to really take advantage of that. So that's also another thing. Well, it was like 2.5 times a day. So that's another thing. And the other thing is there wasn't nearly as much stuff available now as there is. So you cleared out probably in about like a month. You would completely 100% the game. If you played every day, you played like a couple hours every day, you explored, etc. Within a month, you 100% of the game. And then there was like, you guys think there's nothing to do now? There was really nothing to do then. Even the events cost resin back then. So you had to choose a lot of times, although the events gave pretty good progression, like character progression rewards a lot of times, but it wasn't specialized. So if you needed character talent mats, you had to choose between like really good event character progression rewards, or you had to choose character talent mats. Events not costing resin wasn't a thing until 1.2, and we all cheered when it happened. So there wasn't all these extra odd and ends activities to do. That way you could chill out more. There wasn't all this stuff going on, and everything was really, really hard simply because you didn't have the characters available to do it. A good example is this domain, right? We all know that this domain here is a bunch of cryo enemies. Remember how I just said how few selection you had unless you were a whale whenever it came to pyro characters? It was a very challenging game at the beginning. I remember the very first time I went against the Electrocube, it actually took me about 20 minutes to kill, 15, 20 minutes to kill. It was really rough. And you kind of just had to get really good at dodging. You had to get good at all these mechanics. And there was also the fact that nobody knew what the hell they were doing. Crescent Pike Shingling was actually to play. You had Pain Slasher Razor as one of the best characters. You had Physical Official as one of your primary damage dealers. You had all sorts of wacky tobacky stuff to try to clear because nobody really knew about elemental reactions. Nobody knew how to abuse it. Nobody knew how abusable it was until people found out the classic Kazuha, not Kazuha, Kazuha obviously wasn't available at the time. It was Sucrose Bennett Mona team. Once people found that team, you can kind of slap anything into it, but for that you had to have Bennett and Mona, which was pretty hard. Sucrose was one of the first featured characters. I believe she was featured on the Venti banner. I know because she was one of the first characters I had. Sucrose is pretty good. But yeah, the game much more challenging. There was not much to do at the time because once you 100% the game, there was literally nothing. You would just kind of walk around. Now, whenever you 100% the game, you can do the TCG. You can go play around in your little teapot. You can go fishing. You can go hang out with friends. Well, you could always hang out with friends, but there's stuff to do now. Right? And also now the events are much better quality, much higher caliber. You have a massive character selection now. Like if we like look at the very beginning, right? The very beginning was, we can include Klee in this. Was these rows here. This was the very beginning. You could fit it all on one little page. You don't even have to scroll up. But now there's all of this. There is like double the amount of character selection. Genshin, with its slow character release, still over time has given you a ton of teams that you have activated or that you have active that you can use. And with the addition of Dendro, it is so much easier to make a low investment team to beat difficult content like Floor 12 of Abyss, to where you have really strong elemental reaction teams using Dendro to just deal tons of damage. All in all, the game has improved a massive amount. A ton. The game has improved to the point where I believe it is an absolutely phenomenal experience for anybody that's wanting to pick it up. The story is pretty good. There's lots of content for you to do constantly. And I know people are going to say, Ho-Yo shield, but no, this is my honest opinion as a day one player. Anybody that believes older Genshin is better is absolutely smoking something, and they need to share it with the rest of the class because it's got to be some really good stuff. Anyways, that's just my opinion. I've kind of rambled on long enough. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys miss old Genshin, or do you think Genshin's better now than what it was? I think saying old Genshin is better is absolutely copium, but I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.